everybody. Before we start tonight's meeting, we have a few presentations. A few special people here in the audience that we want to recognize. I mess up your names if you do. City employee recognition for 5 years of service in the city of Bethany is Jonathan Beatty. Can I pronounce that right? He's not here. We just joined. Also, we have a few of these. 5 years of service in the city of Bethany, and Kyle Pepper. Grab the microphone.
For 5 years of service, Brady Schmidingberg. I know I messed that one up. He's not here. For 10 years of service, Yvette Nelson. Not here either. "15 years of service, Jose Ramirez. For 20 years of service, Steve Caton. We know he's not here. Yeah. 25 years of service, Mark Gurton. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. And 35 years of service, Ray Bohannon.
I asked Ray if he wanted to fight tonight, because that's the only time I would fight him, is when he had one hand tied. I'd still probably lose. Tonight we also have Matt White from OML, our OML representative, with a couple special presentations.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you. My name's Matt White. I'm Mayor of El Reno. I'm your OML, Oklahoma Municipal League representative. Tonight, you guys do business like you normally do, and you all do business based on making big decisions as far as infrastructure needs and things that you all need in your community, whether it be fire trucks, police vehicles, or water lines, or sewer lines, or all the important things. But the one thing that I think that we all agree upon, the most, probably the best investment that we make is our people, and that the ones especially that become our family, work with us, stay with us, live in our community, and enter public service. So we really appreciate all the ones that you recognize today, Mayor. Appreciate that. We want to give these other ones a pin and recognize them. So let's give all the employees a round of applause for everything that you all do. Thank you so much. Believe me, I know it's a thankless job, but we'd like to introduce or like to recognize OML Mark Gurton. Mark, and then here's your 25-year pin here.
Button.
Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your service. And Mr. Bobby Miller? Thank you all. That's not too. We want to make sure we get you one. So appreciate all your service, and Mayor, thank you much for your time. Appreciate you all so much.
Thank you, Matt. I have a surprise announcement. Mayor, would you come here just a sec? Mayor Westmoreland and I participated in a year-long program with OML, the Community Leadership Development class. And he was not able to come to the graduation in person. However, he did it online, and he presented along with his group. And I just wanted to bring your certificate and hand that to you in person.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you very much, buddy. Take a picture of him.
I know you don't like surprises.
Yeah. Now I call to order the Bethany City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 5th, 2019. Will you please rise for the invocation and the flag salute? John. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilmember Palmer, will you lead us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this great city. We thank you for these great people that live here. We thank you for all of the blessings that you provided for us. Guide and direct us in all that we say and do. Give us the will and discretion to make the best decision and to work as a team. We praise you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Item 1 is consent docket A through E. Do I have a motion or any questions?
I move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2.
The sound is not connected to, is not plugged in.
Is the sound hooked up from Mrs. Larson? Is that better?
Thank you.
Item 2 is consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 1536 of the City Council of the City of Bethany, Oklahoma, declaring a private sanitary sewer line generally located on North College Avenue between Northwest 46th Street and Northwest 48th Street in the City of Bethany, Oklahoma, and specifically the portions of the line located at 4809 North College Avenue and 4811 North College Avenue, a public nuisance, ratifying the public nuisance declared by the city manager on March 4th, 2019, declaring an emergency, authorizing the city manager to abate the nuisance through repair of the sanitary sewer line or other means reasonable and proper, declaring an emergency and waiving the provisions of the Public Competitive Bidding Act. Do I have a report?
Actually, I was the one that prepared that, and so if you don't mind, and I did tell Chief Cole that I would step in on this. This is a lot of Beth Ann words that I built into this resolution, but essentially we had a situation in a neighborhood where there was a private collector line, for lack of a better word, and the line is failing. For whatever reason. It could be gases, it could be illegal connections. It's, of course, difficult to say because I don't believe that they can get a camera in there right now to find out what the problem is. The problem is that it's discharging raw sewage into the neighborhood, which is obviously a public safety, health, and welfare issue. And so Chief Cole and the city engineer and I had a long discussion trying to figure out the most expeditious way to address this. And while this is a private line, the only way to truly make the raw sewage stop from discharging into the street and into the properties is to cut off the water. And if memory serves, that would affect, I think, 12 to 15, 16 homes, something like that. That's not really an effective solution. So right now, it's my understanding that the Public Works Department, I believe, has actually created a bypass system whereby it's being processed into a manhole so that it can go back into the city's collection system. So yesterday, what we did is in order to get this moving, we suggested that the city utilize the administrative process for public nuisances. But I thought that it was important that the council be aware of this, and so my recommendation was that it be placed on the agenda so that the council could ratify the finding of, in this case, actually, it was the Human Resources Director who was acting on the behalf of the city manager because he has the flu. And so he did, in fact, make that finding that it is a public nuisance. So now the city has the ability, assuming the council approves this resolution, to go in and abate the nuisance. Now, in this particular case, abatement is going to consist of repair of the sanitary sewer line because, of course, digging it up and replacing it at this stage would be very, very expensive. And I think that, that there are certainly opportunities for further discussion on that particular issue. But at the present time, this has got to be fixed because it really is creating an issue. So what I also built into this particular resolution was not only a declaration of the public nuisance and ratifying the decision of the administrative process, but also the ability of the city manager to utilize city crews or a plumber, whoever he deems necessary, to go in and make the necessary repairs to the line so that at least it will function in this short time. Last but not least, I thought my understanding is, now, and granted this was communicated to me from an hour and a half away, but my understanding is the proposed repair should only cost about $2,500. However, in the event that they get in there and determine that there's something that's really, really problematic about it, what I did is I built in a provision that the Competitive Bidding Act is waived under the emergency provisions because it does qualify as emergency under the Competitive Bidding Act. So I apologize that I went on so long. I hope that this answers your questions. I'll be happy to answer any more.
I do know that, is this the same thing that Councilman Palmer, you have worked on for a year and a half and others have, and we were just 2 residents shy of getting access to all the easement that would have fixed this a year ago or however long ago it was, and now here we are today.
And I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And on this proposal, are they proposing our city employees render the repairs, or are they talking about bringing outside people in?
My understanding is they're going to utilize a licensed plumber to make the repairs. I'm sure they may have to be assisted by some city crews, but since I believe a plumber has already identified the area of where they believe the problem is, that's my understanding of how they're going to go about resolving that. And, of course, because it is going through the nuisance abatement process, and this was a question that Councilmember Larson had asked me, the city does, of course, have the ability to follow the statutory process to file a lien in order on the properties, the affected properties, to recoup that. But at some point in time, there's probably going to have to be a long-term solution in terms of replacement of the line, and that could be handled through an assessment district or something.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So just to be clear, By this process, this allows the city to go onto the private property of the residents who have the problem with their sewer line, remediate and make the repairs to the extent that it will eliminate the nuisance. And then that will allow the city to follow up based upon their current plan in order to replace the sewer line and add some manholes to prevent this from happening in the future. Is that right?
Up to the part to where, yes, they can enter onto the land, yes, they can remediate the nuisance, yes, they have full statutory authority to do that. Hopefully, in the process of doing that, then they will gain the information necessary to move forward eventually. But,
Okay.
they're eventually going to have to get the remaining, you made a great point about the easements. At some point, that discussion's going to have to advance in order to gain access if this truly is going to become a city project.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, if I may, that process has already begun. We've got SRB, and they're in the process of trying to fix this. So this is one way to provide additional information to expedite the process. Obviously, we don't want sewage running down anywhere in the Bethany municipal city limits. So this had to be done, and we're in the process of trying to fix the problem permanently so that it doesn't happen again. And we have gone about that process, and I would hope that if and when we get information back from the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality, that the city council would act quickly to enact that so that we can make the repairs and send it out for contract to get this thing taken care of. It's been a long time coming, and unfortunately we had to get to this point. I think it had been kicked down the process so far, and here we are. And in my mind, it could have been avoided if we'd taken proactive action a long time ago, but this is what we have to do right now, unfortunately. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mrs. Larson?
May I have the-
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. As Mr. Palmer has said, that this has been a long time coming. This isn't a new event for the citizens or for the city of Bethany. It needed to be corrected before, and it needs to be corrected now that we're in an emergency situation. We don't want to pay up to $10,000 or more a day. So if we can get a repair for, I'm going to say $5,000, in case our quote's been fairly conservative, I'm not in a opposition for us to correct this. I am concerned, though, of several things, and one is permission from the property owners. I don't know if any of them are here, but the property owners, not renters, but property owners, if that's the case, that we have the permission to move forward. And I don't know if that happened in the hearing yesterday or today, whenever it occurred. The other question I have is, are we opening the door as a council for this to happen in another area and it be thrown back in our face that we're paying to fix somebody's plumbing? If that would happen in another ward, and the constituent said to me, well, you fixed it up there, you're going to fix mine, I want to be able to say that those property owners paid for that. I don't care if we have to have a long-term payout or something over it. These citizens have been aware for many years that this was on their property. It was their problem. It says in our paperwork that it was done illegally. With those factors in mind, I think it is the responsibility for us to protect our city and get it fixed. But I think it's the property owner's responsibility to reimburse.
You want to address that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Okay, the first thing is, you don't have to have permission of the property owners. I mean, because it's been declared a public nuisance, and we've gone through the Bethany belt and suspenders approach, not just the administrative process, but also having the council approve it. I mean, the council, in my mind, has an obligation, under the current circumstances, to go in and rectify the situation, because you can't have raw sewage running down the street. That is an unacceptable health situation. So I think that makes this situation remarkably unique compared to most others. So you've got the statutory process in place, and that's precisely what the statute, amazingly, what the statute was designed to do. Second of all, this, like I said, this is an emergency. This is not something, the only way to permanently rectify this particular situation immediately would be to cut off the water service. And even then, that may not work, because if someone brought in water, trucked in water, I mean, and if they're still, flushing the toilet or brushing their teeth or whatever, despite the water source, I mean, it still would create a flow. Like I mentioned in my opening comments, the city does, of course, have the ability to file a lien against the property. Now, as a practical matter, what happens is, when the property's sold, that's the point that the city would probably be able to collect. One other thing, in terms of permanent solutions that the council always has available to it, is what's called an assessment district. And so it's a long statutory process, but it's a great way for the city to partner with citizens to address situations just like this. So, the great thing is, it's being addressed now, and so I'm happy to answer any other questions.
But this was a result of having two holdouts that didn't give the city the easement access, because we would have fixed this a year and a half ago, and this would not have happened, correct?
Hi, Councilor Lyons.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, at one point, the previous council said that the only way they would repair, from my understanding, that the only way they would repair or put this new line in is if all of the residents affected would sign off on an easement, and the city did not have to pay for that. So those were the marching orders to get the project moving. And over a period of time, David Davis and a very concerned citizen by the name of Meg Barton, and to her credit with David, they went door to door. I went door to door, not to the extent Meg did, or David Davis, and they were able to get the easements for all except two. And in the process, we hired SRB, the city hired SRB to come up with a plan in order to implement and put in a new city sewer main. And there were two people who would not sign, and that delayed the process to the extent that the design had to be modified. And that's what delayed the process. And we are now on track to ensure that those plans will be implemented despite the two residents who did not sign the easements. And we are in the process of, we've presented our application, and Mr. Caton's not here tonight, and he'll probably correct me, but that application has been submitted to the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality, which takes approximately 60 to 90 days. And so we're waiting on that process to be approved. Once that is approved, it'll be sent out for contract, and we will be on our way to getting this problem taken care of. But in the meantime, we've had this situation come up, and we've had the statutory process to allow the city to make immediate repairs in order to prevent any type of harm or exposure to raw sewage, and that's exactly why we're doing this. So it'd be my recommendation that this be approved, and I would make a motion related to that.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
The company SRB, this isn't large enough that you need to have it sent out?
One thing that you might keep in mind is, I think we need to kind of narrow back down to the emergency declaration. I think that was more for
Okay.
historical, but from a staff perspective, we absolutely can look into that.
I'm concerned about some conflict of interest with that company, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we'll look into
Mayor.
that.
Mr. Mayor?
Hold on. Mr. Herron?
One comment, February 19th, we have already approved sending this out for bid to replace it. This was done in our last meeting. So we're just trying to find something to fill in the gap. The plans have been submitted. We're just waiting on ODEQ's approval. The engineering's finished, and the council's already approved this to go out to bid. So that's all in the works currently.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
There is no conflict. SRB came up with a plan to put in the sewer system. It'll be sent out for contract, and other contractors will come in to do the actual work. So there is no conflict. They were hired to make the assessment to come up with the engineering plans. Those have been approved, we've paid them, and now we're waiting on ODEQ. So there is no conflict.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 3 is consideration and possible approval of an agreement with Oklahoma County Emergency Management to outfit a cab and chassis truck with new equipment to make a fully operational brush wildland fire truck. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Herron, do you have any questions?
I guess I have a comment for this. This is far from my area of expertise. I'll be honest. I don't see the need for the brush pumper in the city of Bethany. It seems pretty limited, but I also want our Bethany citizens fully protected. And when the chief asked for this, and the former chief also recommends it, this is out of my area, so I'm going to support that. So that's my comment.
Chief Sean, do you have anything to add?
Well, appreciate that. We do need it. We have a lot of green space in the city of Bethany, and we also help out with neighboring cities. We also are part of the task force that goes out when we have the large wildfires. So our current unit is 18 years old this year. Both the previous chief and I recognized it needed to be replaced at some point, and this is a great opportunity because the county for once has some money, and they are able to purchase a cab and chassis, whereas they haven't been in years past, and they're trying to spread that money out to different communities that they've been helping out. So this would be a great opportunity, so it's not all on the city's budget, and gives us a great opportunity to upgrade our truck to where it actually does a better job than what the current configuration does.
Is it true that, did I hear correctly, that the plan was in the budget to redo the back entry ramp to the fire station, and some of these funds that will be used are essentially putting that off till next year to be able to help purchase part of this situation?
In part, that is correct. Yes, part of that money has been used to, we had money in the budget from the previous chief, and then it was taken out by the previous city manager for some reason. It was not explained to me why. And the further it got on through the year, and the opportunity that the county had given us to take part in this, we needed to kind of move forward, and the only way to do that was to see if we could move some money from a ramp that we could put off probably for a year or maybe two at the most, and use that additional money to help fund this project. I spoke with Chief Cole about that, and we agreed that would probably be all right since it was capital improvements anyway. It was funding a new truck, so that's why we had that money moved.
What do you propose to do with the old truck?
The old one will go back to county. We will take our hand tools, anything that we've put on there, we will take that off, and then they will take it and dispose of it as they see fit.
Mr. Knapp?
So, Chief, if I understand this correctly, the county is funding more than 2/3 of the cost. Is that?
The county is putting, they gave us, they've already purchased the truck for, I believe it was just under $50,000.
Okay.
And we're upfitting that from that point forward to make it a fully operational brush rig.
Okay. Thank you.
Is part of the agreement to give them the old truck, is that written into the agreement? Or would it be possible to sell the old truck and use the proceeds towards that?
No, what has happened is, even though they're giving us the cab and chassis, that's still their asset. That stays on their inventory, just like this truck that we currently have. It is a county brush rig. We just get to use it, and we get the majority of the use of that truck. And from time to time, if we have these large wildland fires and the task force is activated, when we have the manpower, we can respond. We won't jeopardize the coverage of the city to do that, but if we can't man it, then we don't. And most of the time, we stay back and cover War Acres and us if War Acres goes. So we're covering both cities anyway. And again, it's just to reiterate, there's this truck, along with the current truck, gets us into green spaces that we have, not just the parks, but places, the green belts around the neighborhoods, up off 5200 Peniel. There's a lot of green space in the city of Bethany that we can't get to with our apparatus.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So what is the remaining balance after you take the money for the ramp? That's a capital improvement. What account is that coming out of? Do you know?
I don't have it down. I believe it's 404. I think it's 404. It's
Is that
for-
the fire department's budget, or is it?
Yes, capital.
So you
capital
have
improvements.
allocated budgetary funds to make up the difference to cover the whole cost. I think it's what, approximately $70,000?
Yes, yes.
Was War Acres asked to split the expense, or is that a possibility?
They bought their own.
Okay, so they have their own, we don't have one.
We have ours,
But
but
it's not-
it's not ours. And this keeps us from footing the entire bill to make it ours.
Okay.
And plus, the reason we got the county rig in the first place is because we're covering Woodlawn Park as well.
Do I have a motion for
I'd make a
approval?
motion.
Do I have a second? Second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'll stay up here for the second one.
Item 4 is consideration of possible approval of specifications for replacement fire station backup generator and transfer switch, and authorize staff to solicit bids. SR, you have a little bit of understanding with fire departments and generators. Do you have anything to ask
Well,
or add?
I would ask Chief Jennings, do you remember what year we bought that generator?
It's a 1998 model.
So we're looking at 21 years.
That's correct.
We've got, it is obviously at the end of its service life. It's more than paid for itself. I have every faith that Chief Jennings has done his homework in speccing this out. We talked a little bit prior to the meeting, and some discussion on how big, and I think probably that's to be worked out in the bid process. But that is a necessity for us. The fire department must have emergency backup service when we have a storm or something. We've got to keep moving. We can't leave town. The fire department is here to protect the citizens, so it's just incumbent that we stay alive and we have lights and all the things that we need. So a backup generator is not a luxury. It's a mandate.
Are there any other questions? Mr.
Councilman, you said that you did an awful lot of work on this particular thing. Is it appropriate to ask for a comparable bid for 50 kW versus the 80 kW? I mean, then get quotes both ways, or is that conflict? How does this work here?
When I said I did work on it, I meant like legal work. What I did was I took the specifications that they had actually provided. We did have some discussions about it, but it's like he and I had a discussion yesterday about broadening the scope somewhat. And so I don't know that there would necessarily be a prohibition at this stage to, because it hasn't gone out for bid yet, right?
It has not.
Okay. So, of course, typically those are operational level decisions, but if the council had an opinion about the ability to maybe go with something a little bit lower, you certainly could express those to Chief Jennings, and that at this stage could be incorporated into the bid specs.
Chief Jennings, you want to address that?
Well, we had a discussion earlier, and Councilman Todd had asked about a 50K, and I just told him what I had spec'd out was a 70K is what we currently have, a Kohler generator, and I had talked to various vendors about getting different prices, and because the pricing that I had gotten from everybody went over the spending limit that necessitated it going out to bid, I talked to one of the contractors who was the lowest bid, and I asked him about possibly going to an 80K if we ever expanded the department, if we ever had more usage. And he asked me to get him some information. I did. He quoted me a price on an 80K, and his interpretation was that he could get us an 80K for a little bit less than a 70K, because it allowed our decibel operation. And so I thought, well, if we could do the 80K for less money, then that's what we put in. I was trying to keep us with what we currently had or improve it.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was reading over your bid. There's no question that you're entitled to a new one. The question I have in regards to the bid is you're only giving 10 days for your bids to be returned. Is that enough time? I mean, if there are not very many providers.
Well, we can change that time frame. This is the first one that I have done. So I'm trying to get it done, because this went out the 1st of January. And thankfully, our water department has allowed us to use one of their generators. I've been trying to make this thing happen since then, and so I'm trying to cut down as much time. I've gotten 4 bids so far, and I will send them packets as well as sending it out for bid. If the time frame doesn't, I can lengthen it. I'm just trying to shorten it down.
Sometimes a short string gets them on the bid.
If they really want it, then they're going to bid.
Somebody might want a bid that won't get it in time.
Sounds to me
So I
like
just
you need a
wondered.
generator.
We need a
We
generator.
need one.
Mr. Mayor, if I might,
Yes.
I think it's incumbent that Chief Jennings be allowed to move quickly on this. We're entering into the storm season. The likelihood of losing power is just a few weeks away. So I think with the vendors that he has, the local vendors that can supply the fire department with the generator, 10 days is more than adequate. But again, the longer we put it off, the more risk we have of having a failure over there. How is that generator that you've got from the?
It's working fine.
Working fine?
The switch is manual now. It's not automatic like it used to be, so the guys have to go out and switch it if it ever does, we ever do lose power. But it's way better than not having something.
So what that means, if it goes out, one of the guys are away from the station, it's
Right.
not going to kick on, and
Right.
that creates another level of management that has to be considered.
I will comment on that, Mayor.
Okay.
This, on the 10 days, this is a very simple install and should not be lengthy at all for any contractor to come up with a bid, so.
Do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes.
I guess you're right. Thank you.
Item 5 is update from Community Development regarding the Title 15 rewrite, followed by opportunity for council to ask questions from the staff. And I ask for this item to be put on the agenda.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start with a little bit of history for our new council persons, so you kind of know where we're at and what's led up to the Title 15 rewrite and where we are in the process. As most of you know, the City of Bethany adopted a new comprehensive plan in 2016. It was the first update in over 40 years, since 1972. After the comprehensive plan was adopted, it was needed for our current ordinances to be updated to support the newly adopted comprehensive plan. So with the new comprehensive plan, we needed our ordinances to reflect what we were wishing for the future of Bethany, specifically Title 15, which is our land usage chapter. In August of 2017, the city entered into an agreement with the Institute for Building Technology and Safety to rewrite Title 15. So they were hired to come in and rewrite Title 15 to the specifications that we wanted to support the comprehensive plan. Just so you know, the land use of chapter includes, in case you don't know, building regulations, drilling regulations, mobile homes and travel trailers, signs, subdivisions, site plans, flood damage prevention, airport height regulations, public improvements, zoning, and portable temporary storage units. So it's a pretty robust chapter of our ordinances. City staff received the final rewrite from IBTS January of this year. We did a workshop with both planning and zoning and city council. After both of those workshops, everyone felt that we were not in a place to move forward with adopting Title 15 the way it was. So city staff has been working on it since. In January, I sent out an email to the current council saying 3 months, so in April we would have something to present, and we are still on track for that, to have something to present in April that staff is working on in-house. At the same time, while working on Title 15, staff decided that this is the best time to also work on additional ordinances that we need, that are missing, that need to be revised, so that we could present everything to you at one time, we could get everything adopted and make it easier. So some of those other things that we are currently working on are a food truck ordinance, short-term rental ordinance. We're updating the sanitation ordinance to be better in line with our new polycart system, so we're getting that up to speed. And then we are also working with Beth Ann on some medical marijuana issues and a couple of other things, cleaning some different areas up. And that is where we're at. So come April, we will have something to present. We will workshop again, so we will have a workshop with planning and zoning. We will have a workshop with council for your feedback, for changes, for what you want to see. But our hope is that very quickly after that, we can adopt something and get moving forward with a lot of the development that's coming up. These rewrites are going to be very important. They include a mixed-use ordinance that we don't have right now, and some things that we really need for some of the opportunities that are coming our way. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So from January until April, how are you working on Title 15? I mean, what specifically are you doing?
We are going in and we are working on all the areas that were brought up during the workshops. We've made changes to the mobile home section that I believe maybe you brought up, I think, during the council workshop. We have our building inspectors working on some of the sections that pertain to them. They're looking at setbacks, setback requirements, height requirements. We're pulling ordinances from other towns that are similar to size and us to see what they're doing to make sure that we are in line with what the people around us are doing, so we are not outdated or putting additional restrictions on builders that other towns may not be doing. We're completely rewriting the sign ordinance based on some feedback and guidance from Mr. Davis that he's given us. And as far as the new ordinances, we're creating and crafting those from scratch.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So what did IBTS do, and why are we redoing what they did do?
We are taking what they did and we're building on it and maybe recrafting it some to better suit what we need.
Well, my concern is that we paid them a lot of money to do this.
$111,000.
And so now we're having the delay and we're having to redo it. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say redo, but yes, we're taking some additional time to make changes, to make corrections, and to make it better suit what I believe planning and zoning and council wanted to begin with.
Did IBTS work with you as they were preparing their draft before they submitted it to the Planning Community Development Department?
They worked with our staff some in the years since I got here. They came on in 2017. I'm not sure what all work they did in that time, but in 2018 when I came in, they did work with us some on different portions of the ordinance rewrite.
Has anybody on staff of the Community Development done this type of a rewrite before?
I've written ordinances quite a bit in the past and previous jobs.
Have you ever done this one this big for Title 15 with all of these topics?
No, no.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'll ask that question. Is staff going to be, do you feel comfortable that you can take this project through to completion?
Yes, sir. 100%.
Okay.
Item 6 is Housing Inspection Program presentation by Amanda McClellan, Director of Planning and Community Development.
I think Barry's going to come down and pull my presentation up for me because I do have slides for you. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, housing inspection program. This is something that was brought to my attention by Councilman Palmer a while back, and I started doing some research, staff and I, on it. It is a program that Dell City is currently using, and so I have met with their staff and with their director and put together a overview of us of what that program is, what it's for, what it would look like if we implemented it here, and kind of the purpose of it. So I'm not going to read you the slides. Basically, Traditional efforts to remediate blighted conditions are reactive in nature and not proactive in nature, so a lot of times we're behind the ball in trying to get those things done. We can use the building code to serve to address some of the root causes of blighted conditions, and that's kind of what this program is about when we get into it. So Bethany, as it is, nearly all the original housing stock remains today. We know that we're a landlocked community. According to our comprehensive plan, our neighborhoods exhibit signs of blighted conditions, including general deterioration of the housing stock. You'll see a lot of slides in here that are pulled directly from the comprehensive plan when they came in to do the comprehensive plan. A number of indicators would show what constitutes blighted conditions. I'm in the process of getting statistics from all of our different departments to be able to present to you. Most of the time it's police calls, animal control calls, non-cooking structure fires, code enforcement, obviously, delinquent water bills. Those are all things that would contribute to, blighted conditions in neighborhoods and in the city. So the goal of the comprehensive plan, for those that may not know, as far as it came, housing stock, Bethany is going to be an attractive community, family-friendly, safe. We want unique neighborhoods. We are in a cycle of decline, primarily due to the current state of housing, sidewalks, parks, libraries, infrastructure, and public safety. Obviously, we're getting a new library, so that is fantastic. A large number of the homes in Bethany have not been improved or well maintained. Many neighborhoods are lacking what the market wants in the mix of uses and the missing middle housing. You'll see the comprehensive plan talks a lot about the missing middle housing. Degrading homes means that, home values go down because of poor appearances and, no upkeep. And there's a lack of maintenance and reinvestment in rental, single-family, and multifamily units. And a lot of times we see that's because there's absentee ownership. So we've got a lot of people who own rental homes or apartment complexes, but they don't even live here. This only pertains to homes, so this in no way will touch our apartment complex issues. So, what is this program supposed to do? It's intended to ensure safe and sanitary living conditions to all residents. The hope is that it will improve the city's housing stock, improve property values, and also decrease the costs associated with providing services to substandard properties. So those police calls, animal calls, delinquent utility bills. In a nutshell, if we implemented this, nobody could move into a house until they had obtained a certificate of occupancy. And really, that's just the most simple way to break this down. Before you can move in, before you can turn on your water service, before you can get service from us, you have to have a certificate of occupancy. To obtain that certificate of occupancy, you have to apply for an occupancy inspection through the program. So we'll get into that. So the way that it works is you're going to come in, you're going to fill out an application, you're going to say, I'm getting ready to move into this house, I'm ready to have an inspection done. Whoever's on our staff that we determined that was going to do the inspections is then going to go out and they're going to inspect the home. They're going to be able to go inside the home. They're going to look for safety and security type things. They're going to make sure it has heat. It's all going to be based on the International Property Code. It's what they're going to be looking for. They'll have a checklist. If there are no violations found, you get a certificate of occupancy, you get to turn on your water, you get to move in. No issues because your house is safe, sound, secure. We feel good about it. No resident will be allowed to live in a structure until it has passed the inspection. So, therefore, we will not turn on your water, no sewer, no trash pickup if you don't have a certificate of occupancy. So, the design of this program, it includes a lot of different things that we would need to concentrate on. Customer service is going to be paramount. Our customer service is going to be the front line of defense for this program because that's where people come in to turn on their water. This is going to be a new program, so there's going to have to be a lot of education, not only on the public but on staff. The inspection standards need to be clear and reasonable based on life safety, and it has to address all residential properties. So whether you rent, whether you buy, I understand when you buy your house, you have an inspection done anyway. This inspection will be on top of that inspection. So all homes across the board will have to have the certificate of occupancy and the inspection. Consensus building is going to be integral to the success of this program. I can tell you, when we met with Del City and talked to Del City, it took them 3 years for the consensus building portion of building the program. So they worked for 3 years in educating the public, holding town hall meetings, newspaper articles, meeting with the news stations to get everybody on board before they rolled this out. They told me that is an integral part of the success, is having everybody's consensus and everybody on the same page supporting this. Just went over that. If we were going to implement this program, we'd have to make 3 changes. One, we would have to have an ordinance to make it unlawful to occupy a residential structure without your CO. We would have to have another ordinance to make it unlawful for a utility provider to initiate utility services to the property without a CO. And then the third, and I get this question a lot, is we would have a separate regulation provided that city utility accounts will only be opened in the name of the primary occupant of a structure. So I have been asked a lot, what keeps a property owner, someone who rents, from just putting the services in his name, and then you never get in the house. He gets 1 CO and that stays for the next 20 years. Well, we're going to pass something that says it has to be in the name of the primary occupant of the home. Our recommendation, once again, this is just a recommendation based on the research that we've done, is that this would be funded out of existing operating expenses. From what we can tell, it wouldn't take a whole lot of extra money. We've got building inspectors on staff that could do this. Code enforcement could also be included to do this. So really the bulk part of the money would just be for paperwork, application packages, mailing stuff out, anything like that. We're recommending, if we did this, that we do an inspection fee of $40. Re-inspection fees would be provided free of charge, as long as they were showing a good faith effort to do the work that needs to be done. And then we would recommend a re-inspection fee of $100 that can be assessed for missed appointments or multiple failed inspections. And of course, that's just a recommendation. If this is something that we want to move forward with, that's very much open to whatever y'all think is fair and what we would want to do. So, all 1 and 2 family dwellings have to be inspected every time the occupancy changes. If an occupancy change happens within 180 days of the dwelling passing inspection, a new inspection is necessary, but the fee will be waived. And an occupancy of a dwelling for any length of time without a CO would be a violation of city ordinances. And then in our ordinances, we would have a penalty fee. So if you were found in a residence without your CO, we could assess a fee of up to $250 a day, $500 a day, whatever we thought we wanted to put in there as the penalty for doing such. Application procedure. The applications have to be signed by the property owner. There's also a option if you have a property management company that they can do that, or the occupant. Responsible adults need to be there for the inspection. The way Del City does it, and it makes sense, and I would recommend that we do it here, is that the inspections are scheduled every day in like 2.5-hour windows. So all your inspections are done either in the morning between these times or in the afternoon between these times. So that's your dedicated time to this, and then they can go and do their regular building inspector duties or code enforcement duties in that middle time. Once again, that's up to whatever we wanted to do. Inspection results would be available the next day. So obviously we want this to be a quick turnaround. We're not trying to keep people out of their homes or keep them from being able to turn on their services. And we would be able to send their inspection results, either mail it, fax it, email it, or they could pick it up in person. We have adopted the 2015 International Building Code and the 2015 International Property Maintenance Code. These would serve as the basis for what we're doing with this program. So they would be working really out of the Property Maintenance Code as far as what they were looking for and the things that were on their checklist. So the results fall into several categories. Full approval would be if your inspectors went out and there were no code violations observed. So they go in, house is perfect, they don't see anything. Full approval, issue CO, next day, no problems. Kind of what you want. Next would be a provisional approval. So maybe some code violations are observed, maybe minor violations are observed. With a provisional approval, they would grant a provisional CO, but it would be where the occupant or the owner has to make corrections and do so in good faith. So the code violations aren't so major that we think they're a health or safety concern, but there are some violations there. We're not going to keep the person from moving in, but you have to show good faith that those corrections are being made within a given amount of time. Your inspectors will say, I think 15 days would cover this, and then your inspectors would follow up with that. Failure would be just if you're not approved for occupancy, that you've got a dangerous structure, you have a dilapidated structure, your structure is just not safe. And a lot of times this could lead to even the structure being condemned or ordered to be demolished through the code enforcement process. Yeah. So why does this work? A lot of this is kind of based on some stuff that Dell City told us. It's a proactive program, so it's not reactive. So we're trying to get ahead of the issues that could be out there. When we're trying to attract new people into Bethany and to live here and to buy homes here and to invest here, we want them to come to neighborhoods where they have good property value, that they have attractive streets to live on. We want young professionals here, we want young families here, and we want them to, to feel good and to feel comfortable in the neighborhoods that they live in. And it breaks a troublesome economic model of property owners renting substandard properties to tenants just over and over and over, and nothing ever being done. And right now, we just don't really have the means to get inside the properties and see what those issues are. Code enforcement does a good job of working that from the outside, but there are other issues there that we just can't see. And that's it. That's what I have. And I'm sure there are a lot of questions, and I will do the best I can to answer questions. I can say that Dell City started this, I believe, in, 2018, I believe. I have it written down. No, 2008. Dell City established this program in 2008. And so they have been consistently using it since then. They like this program. They speak on this program a lot at planning conventions and other things. They think it has done a good job of cleaning up their city and really helping with some of their areas that were blighted or maybe a little not as well loved and maintained as others. Yeah.
I've got a question. You had mentioned that whoever you deemed or whoever's in charge of this, would this be being done through community development? Because you said whoever was deemed to be the ones doing the inspections. We do have 2 inspectors and 1 code enforcement officer. I'm trying to wrap my head around this thing working and flowing for our city. We have these inspectors. I'm assuming they would be the ones going and doing these inspections, or the code enforcement officer.
Yes, sir.
Who do they answer to?
In Dell City, it's all in the community development department.
Who do ours answer to?
The director, I would imagine, which would be myself.
Is that the way it's established now as far as the pecking order of
Oh, yeah, the building inspectors report directly to me, yes, sir.
Okay.
Code enforcement reports directly to Mr. Stoll.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
You said this was modeled after Dell City, which, when they first came out, I read, and this is far superior. I'm sure they've made adjustments to theirs, but this is far superior than what they had then. How many cities, other than Dell City, do you know in Oklahoma that are doing something like this?
Dell City is the only city I know that's doing this.
The other question I have, you mentioned that the utilities wouldn't be turned on until the approval was made. Is that just the city utilities, or would ONG and OG&E be on board with us as well?
I don't know the answer to that. I could find out the answer to that. I want to say in Dell City that it's just city utilities, but I cannot promise you that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I see one problem here. If the utilities aren't on, it's going to be impossible to do a thorough inspection. And in addition to that, If someone was buying a new home, let's say in Bethany, they're going to have an appraiser come out, they're going to have the buyer is going to have their inspector. I would expect a level of reciprocity with a state licensed inspector doing an inspection, and then someone coming behind them and doing exactly the same inspection if it's passed, and then charging them $40. But without having electricity and water to that building, you cannot do a valid inspection of the occupancy.
That's a fair point.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
how does Dell City handle that? Do we know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
You would
But
think that-
they're handling it some way because they've been doing it for a long time.
I think you would think that if there is a house that's being up for sale, the utilities would be on and that could be inspected.
More than likely.
I think that may be the exception to the rule to the extent that there would be no utilities. Obviously, that's a good point in that they could make an honest inspection to confirm. But the Dell City, they've been challenged twice.
Twice, yes, sir.
And both of those challenges were,
They won.
they
Yeah,
won?
Yeah.
So the legality of this has been upheld in court to the extent
Twice.
that they still have the program.
Yes, sir.
And I guess if this program was instituted in the city of Bethany, obviously we could tweak it to address any concerns that would allow that to be taken care of.
Most definitely. This
And-
is just kind of a rough draft
But
overview.
if, you know, I've lived here a number of years, and if at one point you drove through Dell City, there were a lot of properties that were below grade. And have they been able to turn that around to the extent you can have actual statistical information to confirm that this worked?
Dell City does have statistical information, and I did not include that in this presentation, but it's most definitely something I don't mind sending out to you via email or providing at the next city council meeting. But they have the numbers to back up that they feel this program has worked for them.
Well, and I think it's my understanding that they were able to, I would say, upgrade 700-plus residential homes within their city, and they're very similar to Bethany to the extent they're landlocked.
Yes.
And
Same
they,
population.
the population, there are a lot of similarities related to Bethany and Dell City, and they had the same problem we have to the extent we need to upgrade our housing stock. And ultimately, I think the property owner has an obligation and can do this on their own, and that should be the right way to do it. But if it's not happening and it's not helping the community, then there needs to be some catalyst in order to create that. I think my concern is we have people inspecting inside houses. I mean, that's something to get used to, I guess. But the problem is the property owners have not been taking care of this on their own to the extent that they need to improve their homes. Is that fair?
I think that's fair, yes, sir.
So
I'd like to bring up something. You had said that the property would have to, the utilities would have to be in the occupant's name so that you don't have a owner just setting it up once. And
Yes, sir.
I've heard that in other states, I believe Colorado, that rental properties, they force them to be in the property owner's home in order to keep from having residents skip out on their utility bills, and then the city is missing, losing out on those utilities. So I think that's something, I don't know which is the way to go in this, but that's something that we need to address as well.
Yes, sir.
Are we working on anything towards derelict apartments? We're talking here houses, but what about apartments?
There is nothing currently on my radar for, let me take that back. We're not actively working on anything for apartments right now. I think it's definitely on the radar of all of staff. It's just finding the most effective program or way to go about that.
We have recently passed a charter revision, and if somebody would like to purchase some apartments and redo them, that would be doable if a developer wanted to do that, because that then would go through the P&Z, through a PUD, and then on to council, and we would get to decide if that was a development that we liked or not.
That's exactly right.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
question. I worked in Dell City a long time before that, but I've been there, and I can see the difference, just like Mr. Palmer said. My question is, what's your timeline? You got a little bit more tweaking to do? some things that we will have to pass to implement this. Do you have an idea?
I don't, because right now I was just kind of in the fact gathering stage and, consensus building among council and having the new council. I think if this is something that we want to do, we could probably move rather quickly. I have all the applications already done. I have all the forms already done. All the paperwork type stuff is already done. I think it would really just come down to passing the needed ordinances and resolutions and just kind of deciding some of the details to what we want the program to look like. But the meat of it has been done in this process.
This is more of a first draft.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes, sir.
can, one final question. I think logistically, how do we communicate this to the realtors, to the buyers, to the sellers, to get them on board with this?
I think that's a great question, and I'm not sure there is a solid 100% answer. I think education is key to anything. I say that a lot. So I think it's going to be a lot of the staff reaching out, as well as council. I think town hall meetings, utilizing everything that we have as far as social media, website, Channel 20, flyers that go out in the water bill. I think even probably for consensus building, going out and talking to people one-on-one is really going to be important. Those key players, whether it's the property managers or the property owners, whoever we think that this is going to affect the most, we're just really going to have to spend the time and put in the time going through the education process. And that may not happen overnight. We might need to give ourselves several months for that so that everyone's on the same page.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Do you think it would be a good idea to discuss this process to the extent that we could avoid the initial knee-jerk reaction that some people may have regarding this program or potential program, and then come up with a compromise or a solution to get what would be directly, subjectively applicable to the city of Bethany? I think Councilman Hunter has brought up some great questions, but I think we could do this to be in line with the needs for Bethany at this particular time. Is that something that would be a part of this process?
For
to
sure.
communicate?
Yeah, I think an open dialogue is very important, and I think that that might be where we've missed the boat in the past, and I think we're on the right track with that moving forward, whether it's the new polycart system or, charter changes. I think it's just giving people the time to make their voices and their concerns heard and taking that into account, and then, making the decision that y'all think is best for the city moving forward.
I can speak for your peer pressure that you were talking about in your presentation, because within our own neighborhood that we have 73 homes. We're an aging neighborhood. Most of our neighbors, property owners, I would say I'm the young one, 10 years ago. In a period of about 3 years ago, we had a whole bunch, 6 in 6 months almost, that moved in with young children. Our whole neighborhood has changed. One did a complete makeover of a home, and the next thing, neighbor on the other street did one. I counted this week, and including ourselves, I think we've had about 15 homes that have remodeled in less than a year. I hate to say Peter wants to keep up with Paul, but you put out the daisies, I'm going to put out the roses. That's kind of the attitude that you get and it's almost like a game. But it's a good game because it breeds goodwill. Right. And so I think when you have people that are willing to improve their properties, even in that arena, you're going to find that those are the people that are going to support this, and it will mushroom faster than you think.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
I think a program like this is more of a last ditch effort. I think we have a lot of ordinances on our books that have not been enforced properly over the last number of years. We have new code enforcement on time, and I think we need to see our existing ordinances enforced for 1, 2, 3 years to see if that doesn't clean up a lot of the problems before we move in with such a large change like this.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if you live in Ward 2, we need this program. So with all due respect, Councilman Herron, we need to find a solution to this problem, and this is something that we should discuss, and I would ask that all parties reserve judgment until we go through the process. When you live in a neighborhood where you have a substantial investment, and you put your money on the line, and there are things going on in your neighborhood that you can't control because of the market. But I will say, and I'll make this positive, to the extent Ward 2 is coming back, and we have wonderful additions, and we have a lot of new housing that's coming in, and I'm encouraged by that, but I think that this would improve the process. And I do think that, again, we need to find a solution. We may not adopt this may not be a turnkey deal as is in Del City, but it could be subjective to Bethany to get what we need done to improve the neighborhood. Because we do have blighted neighborhoods, and it does increase the quality of life, and it also increases the property value of everyone in the city. And unfortunately, that's for certain areas of the city as opposed to other areas, and I would like people to remember that as we proceed.
I would agree with you, Councilmember Herron, that we have ordinances that historically have been ignored and not followed through with, but I also agree that adding this to it certainly wouldn't hurt.
But driving through the neighborhoods in all the wards, there is still code violation after code violation of existing things that we have. We need code to, and I don't know what the program is, but we need to systematically be going through the entire city, monthly, bi-weekly.
Agreed.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So I'm not sure that things are mutually exclusive. In all of our neighborhoods, there are vastly different socioeconomic levels, people with different types of houses. And walking the neighborhood a couple weeks ago, met a homeless person in our ward in their car. They were in a season of that, so there's vastly different things there. One thing I appreciate about this first draft is that it is not going in while someone is in the house. This is in between occupancy, and so it's not invasive in that regard and going in while someone's there. This is in between occupancy, and hopefully this isn't to catch someone in a normal type of operation. This is for possible owners that are continually offending this and bringing people in, taking advantage on a repeated basis. So that's one thing I appreciate about this initial draft.
No more questions or comments. We're moving on to item 7, which is citizens' opportunity to address the council on general topics related to city business or services. If there's anyone that wishes to address the council, you have a 3-minute limit. Yes, you have a 3-minute limit. No action may be taken on matters under this item. Please step to the microphone and state your name and address. Thank you, sir.
Charles Peck, 6706 Northwest 31st Terrace. I got a few items. Code enforcement. How did I work into that? A few months back, well, almost a year sometimes, I talked with former city manager J.D. Cox and Janet Smith about improving the code enforcement. And I suggested that they agreed, that started documenting issues found. The Bethany Tribune also, started reporting this also. But I see no evidence currently of any activity in the neighborhoods. Bethany citizens must know the status. I worked 40 years at Western Electric, and I was the top inspector. I had inspectors reporting to me quality. And I had a procedure that they had documents that they went out in areas and they checked off. I found this, I found this, and I found this. So I talked with Smith and Cox about it. And I said, they turned those in to me, those documents, and I looked at them, and every once in a while I'd go out and let's see what you found or you didn't find. And they said, that's a good idea. So I guess they started it. They said some kind of procedure. And it started working, you know. The Tribune started reporting it and everything, and online, I guess, that a few times. But all of a sudden, well, we know what happened. Phil Cole, there's interim manager, whoever. I just don't see it reported anymore. And it's a code violations. And there's 4 or 5 things that I picked up 5 years ago, still hadn't been changed, you know, and it's not hard to find that. But anyway, going forward, I just like to see whoever takes over as city manager, not me, but anybody would, you know, take that job is, it's very important. And if you do it, you know, as a procedure, you know, your inspectors or whoever checking it, they'll find out that it works. And we were the best inspection group in the company ever, period. No, maybe, but no, that wasn't true. But anyway, thank you very much, and congratulations to the new kids on the block. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council? Item 8, city attorney's report.
I don't have anything.
Item 9, obviously our city manager, interim city manager is recovering from being a bit sick. Item 10 is the mayor and council members' announcements, comments, and proposals. And this evening I will start. Had a few things here. I had emailed Mrs. Sandoval a week ago or so, and just letting her know that I know we have a growing Hispanic population in the city of Bethany, and I do believe that we probably need to research having an interpreter. As you last meeting spoke in Spanish, I don't speak Spanish. Unfortunately, I did not pay attention in Spanish class, and that's a reflection of that. But also, we may be having non-English speaking residents that live here that may want to address the council. And so I think, and I know as far as a city, we have 3 or 4 interpreters on staff through the police department and dispatch and whatnot. So that may be something we need to talk about. Also, I know Councilman Palmer had brought it up a few different times. There may be others for the last 2 years that we've from time to time talked about trying to put Spanish into our utility bills and the newsletter that goes out every month, and we've not really gotten anywhere with that. And so as far as the council is concerned, maybe you want to look at trying to work with staff and figure out how to make that happen. That would be probably a very good idea. Also, to let you know that we will be sending out word to the LEAF task force. I will be emailing them or contacting them so we can get them started working with city staff, because that is going to come up upon us and they're going to need to make a recommendation to council. Also, just so you know, February 22nd, staff sent out information and ads essentially for the city manager position. And I know that when I made one addition to those qualifications, and I asked Chief to send all of this out to council, which he did, to get back anybody's concern about that one addition. And it was essentially just trying to help council have a little more leeway in making a decision. And it simply says, in addition or in lieu of above requirements, any combination of education, training, and experience which the mayor and city council deem appropriate to fill this position. I think it's important that we hire the right city manager. And now that we have this council, like I mentioned to you guys in the pre-meeting, last council meeting, we needed to make sure that this council was in place. Plus, we had a charter revision that was being voted on, so we could determine what options we had as a council as far as a city manager, and the people spoke, and now we know. And so we are moving forward. I called a special meeting today that was posted for Thursday that will be bringing council together next Thursday at 6 with executive sessions to discuss the city manager position as well as the city attorney position moving forward. So I hope you guys can make that. Is there, Vice Mayor Knapp, do you have anything this evening?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. It's Fat Tuesday. I'm ready for a late dinner, so it won't be long. The only thing I have is that before we meet again will be spring break. So I just want to, anyone who has kids that are out of school, if you stay in town, explore. Go visit the merchants, eat in town. Just encourage you to do that. I'm going to be gone a couple of days, but I'm ready to eat in Bethany, as I try to do all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herron?
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing.
Mr. Hunter?
First off, I'd like to wish my baby girl a happy birthday. She's 34 years old today. Happy birthday, Christina. Number two, I drove by 3131 North MacArthur today, and I was pleased to see that there was the renovation is in progress. So he kept to his word and really got started on that quick, and that's going to be a huge improvement to that part of our city. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Larson?
I first want to say thank you to staff. Been a couple of years since I've been sitting in this horseshoe, and I am amazed at what staff is faced with and how great they are with dealing with it. Coming back on the council, I've asked many different departments for information, and they've been more than willing to provide it, going through the city manager, of course. And I just, it's a trying time for staff with the changeover that they've had the last few years. And I think as a whole, we have a really good group of people that work for us. I think the accommodations that and presentations that were made tonight speak for the number of years that many of our employees and our staff have been on hand. That speaks loudly for our city. One of the things I wonder about is in the police and fire department, if we can get back to searching for grant money. Even if the grant is only $50 or $500 or $100, those add up rather quickly, and there's a lot of them out there still. They're still out there. And I know it takes somebody to dedicate the time. We've had people on staff before in those departments that have done that. I don't know if it's an option, but if it is, it might be beneficial to our city. In response to the mayor's comment about the city manager position, this is one of 3 positions that this council oversees and is responsible for in hiring, firing, and managing. It's possibly, no, it is the most important appointment for day-to-day activity that goes on in this city. The council has had an opportunity in the past to discuss and to set the criteria outside the charter requirements, to develop and plan and to become unified and accepting in what we wish to have in a city manager to lead our city. I feel like this email that went out on Thursday or Friday telling us that it was going to be posted on Sunday without any consultation other than to reply through an email, which I'm not comfortable doing that because of open meeting laws. So I did not respond. I would like to see the council, before those applications are completed coming in, and I'd like, as you have done, call your meeting, which I don't know what time it is because I only got it at 6 o'clock. And it happens to be my granddaughter's, 5 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, okay. Well, we can make the birthday dinner then. She's 18 years old. Anyway, I was disappointed that the council as a whole, the 9 of us, who the 9 of us are supposed to elect, not elect, but appoint and hire the city manager. I think before we ask people to come in and make a decision on whether they're going to represent us, we need to be collectively together and have an idea of what we're going to be expecting of the next person that sits in that chair next to you. Hopefully, this meeting will take care of that, and that we can have that criteria. The last 3 years have been an embarrassment for our city. There's no finger pointing, it's just happened. This is an opportunity for us as the council to join together, to take the opportunity to be collectively, pick the person that we need, that we want. And I want to thank you for scheduling the meeting. That's all I have.
I will address that and let you know that this, from what I was told, is probably the same thing that was sent out when you were on the council for J.D. Cox, when you hired him. So the only thing that's changed as far as the job description from the last time you were on the council would be the one thing that I added. And the other thing, from what I am told from legal, is that when you're sending an email, you don't have to hit reply all, which would be messing with the Open Meetings Act. You can just hit reply, and it's just going to go to whoever initially sent that email, which in this case, I believe was Chief Cole.
Correct.
I'm in full agreement that we need to be a united front and that this is the decision that we make. And like I'd explained 2 weeks ago and again tonight, that the meeting that we will be having, I waited until this council got on board because we could have started this process with the previous council, which to me made no sense since half of them were not going to be on this council. And we had the charter revision that we were waiting on. So that is exactly why it was done that way. Councilmember Palmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the mayor for implementing this new policy related to the bills and a translator for the council. I think that's a great step forward. That was a concern for me from day one, and we have a great capability to use that newsletter in our utility bill for a lot of information, reference information, upcoming events, things like that. And I feel like that there is a section of our population that didn't have access to that information, and I'm glad that we're getting to that point. I think this is a step in the right direction, and I would thank Councilperson Amanda Sandoval for allowing that to happen and helping staff to get to that point. I think it's a long time coming, and I'm excited about that. I would also like to mention that this home inspection proposal that was provided by staff, thank you, Amanda, for doing that. I thought the presentation did a great job of objectively presenting the program and setting the parameters and things like that. I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have to get to the end game, to get to the final ordinance as it applies to Bethany. I think it's a need that we need to address, and I'm ready to move forward, and I'm committed to get that done. And if you have any questions or issues related to that, feel free to contact me by way of email through the city, and I'll be happy to forward that, and we can begin the process, because it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But if we're a part of the process and you want to complain about it, then obviously you need to be a part of the process to get to the solution. So that would be my hope for all of the residents here, that we could work through that and get it together. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Todd?
Mr. Hunter stole my thunder, because I was going to say, I went by there and checked on that property also, and there's quite a crew of people working there, and I was impressed. I want you to know, Mr. Mayor, you're not the only one that has an escort service. I brought mine with me tonight, too.
I noticed that.
Nothing tonight.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate the inclusivity and how open this council is, and that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to say to all the council that if you have an issue or something that you see isn't going the way you think it should go, that you have my email address and you can email me directly, and we can discuss that right there on the spot and not have to wait till Tuesday night at a council meeting on the Horseshoe. So I welcome anybody's input and emails or phone calls. Item 11 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until March 19th, 2019. I call to order the Bethany Public Works Authority. Item 1, consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until March 19, 2019. I call to order the consent docket of the Bethany Hospital Trust, or I call to order the Bethany Hospital Trust. Item 1 is the consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until March 19, 2019. I call to order the Bethany Development Authority. Item 1 is the consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until March 19, 2019, and with that, we are adjourned.